And I am pleased to welcome to the Empty Betters podcast, Minnesota Wild superfan Terry. How are you doing, my man? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm doing as good as can be expected with a 0-3 team, letting in 6 or 7 goals every game. I'm doing as well as I guess I could be.
Yeah, no, I get that. We'll touch on that in a little bit. I just kind of want you to be able to plug your own show. I know that you have a pretty decent Twitter following, and I know that you're into sports betting. So you want to just kind of tell the people about what your show is and how they can find you guys?
Sure. Yeah, I getting well with Terry and friends, Monday to Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern. We go over NHL, Major League Baseball. We're going to be starting up NBA football as well. And then Saturdays, 2 shows, one for Saturday games, and then one for Sunday games on Saturday night. And yeah, go over most of the betting card and give out picks, free picks there, and just talk some sports.
How have you been doing this year so far in terms of NHL, I guess specifically?
NHL's been a bit rough. Everything else has been good. Um, I haven't until the NHL season came. Betting wise, obviously, everyone has losing days, but I wasn't stringing them together. I've had a couple 2 day, 3 day losing streaks since NHL has come back. So
It's so
a bit
hard
of
at the
a
beginning of the
slow.
season, right? It's like you don't know what to expect from a lot of teams, so it's tricky.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. It's early.
Well, I do have to ask because we'll talk about Minnesota Wild before we get into the sports betting specifics. Are you worried about your team? I know you and I were going back and forth a little bit. I think I called them overrated before the season started. We're 3 games in. I'm not saying I'm right, so don't take it the wrong way. But the whole Marc-Andre Fleury thing and net, I'm a diehard Pens fan. I've seen it too many times. What do you think about the Wild so far, given the small sample size?
Well, I obviously I don't like what's been going on. That's for sure. But looking at it, who we played, I'm not making excuses for the team because the team has been dreadful. However, against Colorado, we did look much better. They were playing much better defensively. Some fluky goals went in on Gustafson. Some stupid penalties at the end of the game that kind of derailed that one. But against the Rangers in the first game, LA Kings, a playoff team last year, the former champs. 3 games in, a tough schedule, but definitely not what I want to see so far. But I have a feeling they're going to break the losing streak against the Canucks there on Thursday. So that will be a good way to start off a road trip afterwards with a win.
What are the big areas of concern that you've seen? I'll be honest, I haven't gotten a chance to watch too many of their games so far, just with the way that, how we've been busy with the season getting started and everything. But what jumps out to you is like, okay, this is a problem that we cannot just put a piece of duct tape over going forward.
Well, it's a goaltending and defense for sure. Flurry in his 2 games was absolutely horrible. But it's I'm not ready to hit the panic button yet. I'm still optimistic about the season. But yeah, goaltending and defense. The defense looked much better against Colorado. So if the defense is going to play like that going forward, I'm not too worried about the defense. And the power play and offense has been unreal so far this year. So that's really good to see on a positive note.
I was just talking to the guys earlier about how, I mean, it'd be one thing if you guys had gotten shut out 7-0 3 games in a row or something, but you've scored at least 3 goals every game you guys have. So it's like it's really like you said, just the defense and the goaltending that kind of needs to get going a little bit. And honestly, that's not the worst problem to have for the Wild because their decor is pretty solid in my opinion. Their goaltending is more than capable. So it should just be one of those things. I was saying to them earlier, I was like, I don't think Wild fans should hit the panic button yet. I mean, it's probably just one of those things that just hasn't gotten off the ground yet, but more than capable. And I'm not personally worried for you guys.
Awesome. Yeah, Bill Guerin's an awesome GM. He will if there needs to be a goaltending move made, the Wild still have a lot of people talk about the Wild's cap situation, obviously with the Parisi and Suter buyouts. and kind of say, you guys can't compete because you're over the cap. If you actually look at it, the Wild have 4 million in cap space, which is actually a lot more than a lot of other teams. Um, and if they need to go out and get a goaltender, they will. Garen will do what he needs to do, but I'm not ready to hit the panic button yet. It's early, 3 games in.
Which forwards have jumped out to you? I've been very impressed from what I've seen out of Matt Boldy, and that extends into last season. Who else have you looked at that has been, a stud so far?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Matt Boldy stands out. Obviously, Kaprizov, Zuccarello, amazing together. It's Kalen Addison though. He's a defenseman, but he's the real. Wild fans have been asking why has he not been in the lineup for the last couple of years, especially last year. Why wasn't he playing here? Couldn't really get a good answer out of anybody really, but he's looked awesome on the power play and a good young defenseman. Marco Rossi got scratched. I don't know what's going on there. That's something I'm not really too fond of, but if he's given the opportunity, I know he will be just as impressive, if not more, than Boldy. But he needs to be given the opportunity.
And they didn't really say why he was scratched or anything, just no explanation. Typical NHL, nothing.
Yeah, and he was watching from the press, and it wasn't his fault. Yeah, he took a stupid penalty, but it's his first year. It's the second game. Well, it's not. It's his second game this year. Played in a few last year, but um, I don't really. I like Dean Evison. I love what the job he's done for Minnesota the last couple years, but scratching Rossi is a bit of a head scratcher for me
Yeah,
personally.
I like Evison myself. Nick and I are huge Capitals fans, so he's got some history there. But I liked what he did last year for sure.
I was one of the reasons that I was explaining early on about why I thought maybe the Wild might be in a little bit of trouble is tying this in with Rossi is that, Fiala leaves. They know that they're going to have Rossi who needs to step up. I mean, do you think he's capable of doing that?
Long term, for sure. Long term, I think Rossi will be better than Fiala. Fiala
Okay.
is a very streaky player. Yes, he can definitely score, but people don't really talk about his turnovers as much.
Mm,
But he can definitely give the puck away. Um, so he and when he's scoring, he's the best player in having your team when he's hot. But when he's not scoring and he's giving the puck away on a constant basis, um, he's a detriment to your team. So I
yeah.
guess that's what happens.
Personally, I've liked what I've seen from Kaprizov in the first couple games too. I think he looks like he's certainly not part of the problem first couple games, in my opinion. I mean, I know Zuccarello kind of said everybody's to blame, and I'm sure that that is the case in some ways, but I think he's at least doing what he needs to be doing.
Yeah, he's been scoring and like looking great on the ice. It's just the defense. But I like like I said, I like what I saw from against Colorado. Um, the Canucks game is huge because they've been blowing leads every game.
Hmm.
They've been getting 2 goal. They have a 2 goal lead right now as we talk. So I won't
Yeah.
be surprised if Columbus comes back. I was actually looking at live betting them. Speaking about betting,
I
but I was
don't
looking at
hate
live
that.
betting
That's
them
a good idea.
It's encouraged
at
on
the
this
end of the second
podcast.
period. If it's still 2 goal lead, I might look at Columbus at a nice plus price. But yeah, I think the Wild won't have that issue with Vancouver on Thursday.
Before we move into like betting specific stuff, Kalen Addison was that trade for Zucker with Pittsburgh, right? I'm a Penguins fan, so I'm trying to remember. I think that was the move.
Yeah, Galchenyuk, Addison, and a first round pick.
Yeah. Damn. Thanks. I don't know if that was Hextall or not. I can't remember what year that was. I
Yeah,
think
how
that
are you feeling
predates him.
about that one?
No, Addison was like highly praised in the prospect system. I was kind of bummed when they got rid of him, especially considering Zucker's been so injury prone the last couple of seasons. But still like Zucker when he's healthy.
What
Yeah,
have your
Gennard
thoughts
knew what
been
he was
on
doing there.
Tyson Jost?
Uh, I like what he did in the game against Colorado, his former team, getting the top line there. Um, but he looked better in preseason so far. But it's early. It's a few games. Really like Matt Boldy and Zuccarello and Kaprizov have stood out. Everybody else is kind of in the middle there. Nobody else has really stood out forwards wise.
While we're touching on preseason, I'm curious. Harrison mentioned I live in Milwaukee right now, and I was pretty fired up that they had that preseason game in Milwaukee at the Pfizer Forum between the Wild and the Blackhawks. Did you get a chance to watch that one?
Yes, I actually had money on that one, so
That's fun.
Haha,
Yeah,
let's
the
go.
Wild
yeah,
won big, so I'm sure you probably made out
yeah, it
okay.
was a good
But
day.
yeah, I know it was exciting to see that. I know the game sold out here. I didn't go to the game, but I watched the second half of it on TV after I got home from work, and it really got the city fired up. Like people were talking about it like a couple weeks leading up, being like, "God, I'm so excited to go watch a hockey game at the Bucks arena and everything." So yeah, I was just curious what you thought about that whole thing and the decision to have that game in Milwaukee.
I think it's cool. I think it's cool to have different cities, because well, not every city or sorry, not every state can have a team either,
Right.
and people love hockey all over the place. So that's a good way to at least include some cities. But really, like I know Milwaukee obviously has the AHL team, but Arizona, like the Coyotes, like Milwaukee would be a better place than Arizona. Like really,
Ooh.
any place would be better than Arizona for the Coyotes. But
That's true. That's true. Well, for a long time too, it was kind of an ongoing rumor that like the Blackhawks were against the like having a Milwaukee team because they don't want to lose some of those fans. But I think like as time has gone on and they've seen what Vegas has done, they've seen what Seattle has done. I honestly think Chicago stands to benefit from it, right? Like if you build a team in Milwaukee, that's only going to become like a big rivalry almost immediately with the Blackhawks. And like we all know how much money can be made off of like a great sports rivalry. So I think it would be a huge benefit for the Chicago teams. Like if you look at the Brewers and the Cubs, like Brewers fans always go to like Wrigley and still like go down there to see games because it's such a big rivalry. So I just think it would be a really cool thing.
yeah, for sure.
Moving into the sports betting chat. So obviously we're very early in the NHL season. I think, this other than the Nashville overseas San Jose series, we're 1 week in. So far I want to know, what have you seen? Are there certain teams or trends that you've kind of noticed so far? I make jokes all the time on the podcast. I call it the shots on goal army, where the shots on goal props are just out of control on Twitter, it seems, in my opinion. But what have you seen so far this season?
Um, well, I was targeting Matthew Benyar's props for Seattle. Um, plus money to start out the year. But quickly was minus 150 against Carolina yesterday. So that didn't take long for books to realize that. But player point uh, bets. Some players are like plus 100, minus 110, minus 115 to get a point. And there can be a lot of value getting players that are hot
Mm-hmm.
um, and for a point. So that's what I've been targeting mostly.
For
Gotcha.
sure. I know, speaking of Beniers, I know Burakovsky was sort of in that same conversation. That's one that I was eyeing up. I also have him on my fantasy team, so that's why I started to look into it. But he fluctuates pretty often between like minus 110 and then sometimes he's like plus 140 in there too.
Yeah, when you see the value, you gotta take it. Especially with Seattle. As Seattle's gonna be like, if I wasn't a Wild fan, like if I was just becoming a hockey fan now, I could potentially look at Seattle because I don't live in Minnesota. Heads up, like I live in Hamilton, in Ontario, so I'm
Gotcha.
a Canadian. And people ask me why are you a Wild fan, and I can't really explain it. Uh,
Did
I
you like
saw Koivu score a goal. He was
Yeah.
on his stomach and he scored a goal uh, when I was just getting into hockey, and that was it. I became a
That's
Wild
still
fan.
cool
So
though. I
That's a
like that
cool
story.
story.
to me, they've got one of the
yeah, but
best
it doesn't really
logos in
explain.
sports.
They're like, why aren't you a Leafs fan?
Oh no,
That's
And
fair.
listen, you're
You
better
got
off
a
going with the
good head
Wild.
on your shoulders. That's
Yeah,
why.
you're better off going with the Wild. Don't worry.
well, and then I said recently, like after the Blue Jays fiasco there, I'm like, well, do you think I'd want to be a fan of another Toronto team?
Yeah.
Look at the Blue Jays, but then look at Minnesota sports too. When has a Minnesota sports team won anything? So
It's
I
just
guess,
not Toronto. That's all that
Yeah.
matters.
It's like all their college sports teams, at least their hockey teams, are really good. You know, you got
Mhm.
Duluth, you got Minnesota State, you got Minnesota, who those guys all had dynasties like throughout the 2000s. So for whatever reason, the pro level just hasn't clicked.
I was gonna bust out my Gophers hat initially for this episode, but then I remembered I got this Clayton Stoner t-shirt jersey when I was like freaking 16 or something, which is why it barely fits me, but gotta bust it out for the theme.
Awesome.
I'm curious if you have any futures bets. You got any like Stanley Cup winners, matchups, division winners? Is there any futures that you have money on?
Actually not. I actually did on my channel a video for each team. So I had different people on with me, and we did a one video pretty much every day for all 32 teams. And we did go over props and stuff. But I don't like having the money tied down so far away.
Mhm.
And Stanley Cup props, I want to see the teams first before I kind of just pick. Like I want to actually see how these teams do first, because we are getting some surprises so far.
The value will still be there too. It's not like it's gonna like shoot all the way to the ground. You do have some time to like really assess it, and you can still get it for. I mean, you're anytime you pick the correct Stanley Cup winner during the regular season, you're gonna get like pretty good plus value. So
Yeah,
I,
for sure.
do you have any? If I put you on the spot and said like a Stanley Cup prediction, is there anything that pops out to you? Would you have a couple teams in mind?
Watch out for the Rangers.
Yeah,
And I know they're
fifth
kind
guess
of a
to say that.
favorite more. They're more of a favorite, but they look good. The
Yeah.
Rangers look good in the East. And in the West, um, it may be too early to say this, but Dallas looks pretty good so far.
Ooh,
And
We
if
like
okay.
Mason Marchment keeps up what he's been doing, if Ottinger plays well, Dallas could be sneaky.
we were dumping on them hard, and
in our season previews,
yeah,
we were harsh on them. We're like, these guys aren't shit. They're gonna miss the playoffs.
Yeah,
They
they've
might.
thrown
They
it in
still
our
might. I
face.
think they still might, but we'll see. They do look good. Hot. They're hot off the bat.
it's Dallas though. I need to see more than a 3 game sample size before I'm
Of
sold.
course.
Yeah. Well, Terry, I think that kind of does it for questions on our end. We just wanted to get to know you a little bit. We great analysis on the Wild. Love your picks, that you publish on Twitter, and keep up the good work. And the show's awesome too. I checked it out a couple times before having you on, so keep it up.
Perfect. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Anytime, man.
no
Everyone
problem.
listening, be sure to go give him a follow. Where can they find you online, Terry? What are the names that they should be looking for?
At Let's Go Wild Picks on Twitter. That's my Twitter. GWATAF. Getting Wild with Terry and Friends. And then if you search Getting Wild on Twitter on YouTube, you should be able to find the YouTube channel as well.
Perfect. Alrighty, man. Thank you so much.